For the past 6 months, I've traveled across India. My journey started in Mumbai by exploring a black magic dargah and the slums of Dharavi. I then traveled to the Mahakumbh, where I was overwhelmed by the scale and fervor of the world's largest human gathering. I met my dad and traveled through the Northeast, an incredible 5-week trip exploring monasteries and tribal culture. I traveled India's longest train, the Vivek Express, a grueling yet delightful 75-hour journey of conversation and reflection. I explored the pain and suffering of Kolkata's red light areas and slums, where I learned more about vulnerability and strength than I ever have. I witnessed the chaos and tradition of Varanasi, a city where death surrounds you, and yet it is fully alive and tragically romantic. Much like its food, India is spicy and unpredictable. On occasion, it is apt to upset and trouble you, but more often than not, it enthralls, leaving you with a lasting pleasure and an untamable need for another serving. These are my 10 biggest revelations after traveling India for 6 months. This attitude is deeply rooted in the cultural fabric of the nation, emphasizing that guests should be treated with utmost respect, kindness, and hospitality. Throughout my 6 months in India, I have been hosted, guided, and protected with more warmth and care than I have ever encountered in my travels anywhere else. I can truly say that I never once felt unsafe in this country. That is not a consequence of an absence of fear or worry within me. Rather, it is because each day, stares quickly materialized into disarming smiles, and any look of lostness in me was quickly intercepted by offers of help. I would sometimes have to insist with hoteliers and rickshaw-wallahs that they need not carry my 20-kilogram bag up flights of stairs or down narrow laneways. But such is the attitude of the Indian people. Your comfort is their pleasure, your safety is their duty. Guest is God dictates that the guest be treated with the reverence of a deity, but there were times when I really did feel like a god. By virtue of the color of my skin, I was put on a lofty pedestal and assumed some kind of quasi-celebrity status. Every day I was approached for dozens of selfies. I had grown men hand me their phone to say hello to their wife or children over video call. It were as if an invisible halo hovered over my head. This was a topic I explored in my interview with Mr. Yogendra Yadav. I believe the reverential treatment I received is a product of a colonized mind, a deep-seated insecurity and a burning need to be recognized and accepted by the white man. This inferiority complex informed so many of my interactions across the last 6 months. I found this dynamic to be surprising. You would imagine that a country still crawling out of the rubble of a colonial occupation would be more resentful than reverential. It appears to me that the decolonization of the mind is a more subtle and oft forgotten part of a country, restoring its own identity and sense of self. India is unquestionably the most diverse country in the world. No other has their food, language, culture, and faith alter every 50 kilometers. The same country that is the home of the largest population of Hindus is also the home of the 3rd largest population of Muslims and 2nd largest population of Buddhists. There are over 100 languages, 700 scheduled tribes, and 2,000 ethnic groups in India. I had the great fortune of documenting some of these tribal groups in my episodes on the headhunters of Nagaland and the Chengpa nomads of Ladakh. India spans an area of 3.28 million square kilometers and is marked by immense physical diversity. It has deserts, forests, mountains, perennial and non-perennial rivers, coastlines, and fertile plains. The same country that is home to the orange hues of Rajasthan is also home to the lush greens of Kerala, the Baptist churches of Nagaland, the monasteries of Ladakh, and the burning ghats of Varanasi. I've been able to stay in India for so long because it never felt like I was traveling one country. An Indian friend said to me one day, quite matter-of-factly, "It is a big problem to be in love in India." This is still the most pithy and accurate articulation of reality for many Indians. In a 2018 BBC survey of more than 160,000 households, 93% of married Indians said that theirs was an arranged marriage. Arranged marriages, in my opinion, still represent control, a mechanism to secure bigger agendas, such as wealth or status for the family, rather than the authentic happiness of the individual. This system is in stark contrast to the West, which, broadly speaking, made a clear decision to prioritize the happiness of the individual above all else, including the superstructures of country, family, and religion. I'm well aware of the staggeringly high divorce rates within the West. It hardly makes for inspiring reading, nor a strong justification for the superiority of the Western style, at least if the metric of success is viewed as longevity. However, I deeply believe that people should have the freedom and autonomy to make their own mistakes and not be straitjacketed by the preordained plans of their parents and society. India is religion. Religion is more than theology, more than theory. It dances at weddings and cries at funerals. It forgets what page the doctrine was on, but remembers how grandma lit the lamp every evening. It is temples, gossip, caste, cremation, fasting, miracle claims, incense, expectations, and shame. Any growing hunch I had that religion is a fading technology of yesteryear was swiftly and powerfully arrested in my first 24 hours in India. I've never seen devotion at the scale and with the intensity of India. My visit to the Mahakumbh and Varanasi were my own investigations into the religiosity of India. I'm not a religious person, but I am fascinated by its role in our society and the vice-like grip it has over the hearts and minds of people around the world. It is the thing that they cling to during a tragic miscarriage, when their worlds are washed away by a monsoonal flood's fury, when they are handed their measly wage after sweeping a street for 12 hours in the sweltering sun. But my experiences in India prompted me to wonder, when does devotion drift into fanaticism? At what point do people go inside religion to the exclusion of all else, especially tolerance? This was the focus of my episode on cow vigilantes, in which I encountered people willing to kill in the name of their faith. India's other great religion is cricket. The stadiums are the temples, the televisions the shrines, and the players the gods. Being an Australian, my countrymen's reputation as one of the cricketing giants of the world preceded me, and my knowledge of my own players was regularly tested during small talk. I was positively baffled at the encyclopedic knowledge most Indians possess about Australian cricket. And I'm not just talking about their ability to name Pat Cummins and Ricky Ponting, although with monotonous regularity, they're very eager to prove that they can do that too. I'm talking about the pawn shop owner or rickshawala's ability to dredge up from the wells of their memory the obscure bowling statistics of some lesser-known Australian grey cricketer, of whom I have never heard. I've watched a fair bit of cricket in my life, but I don't think anywhere near as much as the average Indian. India is the most populous country in the world, nudging almost 1.5 billion people, and you feel every bit of it in daily life. Uttar Pradesh, India's most populous state, was home to about 200 million people in 2011. There hasn't been census data collected since then, but it is now a lot more than that. But if we rely on the 2011 data, if Uttar Pradesh were its own country, it would have been the world's 5th most populous that year, ahead of Brazil and Pakistan. Even late at night, small villages are a seething body of movement and commotion. India is almost some kind of experiment with the economies of scale and how much organised chaos can really prevail. I will say this, as an Australian, I come from a country of only 27 million people. That is closely equivalent to the population of Mumbai or Delhi alone. Yes, our education and healthcare systems are more efficient. Our streets are cleaner, our beaches quieter, as they should be. In between my moments of incredulity and frustration at the population of India was a genuine admiration for a country that is able to function as well as it can, in spite of its struggling numbers. In my first month in India, I met a traveller who was sharing his own reflections about India. He said money is as much in the mind as it is in the pocket. The past 6 months in India have been the first time in my life that I have seen the clear need for affirmative action policies. The power of belief in an individual's success and life choices is well documented, and at this point, hopefully inarguable. Beliefs about yourself, your worth, your place in society, your capabilities, your rights are a product of your environment as a child and proportional to the freedom with which you are allowed to dream. When someone's entire lineage has not had more freedom than the ability to see 1 week ahead of their nose, that pressure, and indeed burden, travels down to future generations. I witnessed this firsthand during my time documenting the railway slums of Calcutta. A downtrodden people's minds and spirits need a kind of retraining in what is possible until enough collective self-belief exists for them to consistently compete. There is an old joke that a Westerner cannot view India beyond the lens of cows, caste, and curry. I would hope that my 6 months of journeying through India has transcended that shallow and intellectually lazy assessment of the country. Nevertheless, I was very curious about caste. Of all the countries I have visited, India is the most socially stratified. A lot like drugs, the caste system's legal status is irrelevant to its actual prevalence. I hit the streets of Delhi to ask Indians whether they thought caste still existed in 2025, and it was clear that many people felt it was still deeply ingrained in society, particularly as it pertains to institutions like marriage. Of all the assertions about caste I heard, perhaps the most disconcerting was that it was an invention of the British. The British may have weaponized it, and very effectively at that, but to scapegoat the British as the principal architects is unproductive, not to mention ahistorical. In my opinion, India still has to reckon with this aspect of its society and culture. India carries a deeply traumatic past marked by centuries of foreign domination, colonial exploitation, and violent upheavals. The British Raj extracted vast wealth while leaving millions to perish in famines and suppressed with brutal force. The 1947 partition, one of the largest mass migrations in history, carved the nation in two, triggering riots, massacres, and the displacement of over 14 million people. This painful history continues to shape India's psyche, informing its politics, its art, and its quest for unity and diversity. In my on-ground investigation in Kashmir, I endeavoured to become more acquainted with one of the most sensitive wounds of India's traumatic past. The pain and sorrow I encountered left an ineradicable scratch on my memory. There is a complex patchwork of separatist movements around the country. In many ways, India is an improbable democracy and union. I hope people continue to see that India's greatest strength is its diversity and continue to build a country on that notion. India got under my skin in the best way possible. I think in a former life I was an Indian. I don't know if I was a nomadic shepherd in the hills of Ladakh, a chandal stoking pyres on the banks of the Ganga, a busy bellboy at the Taj Hotel, or a heaving rickshawwala in Kolkata. But my feet walked this soil, and I was raised on piping hot chai and dosas. At this point, I'm beginning to wonder how I will cope without her in my life. Its colour and caprice has weaseled its way into a permanent place in my heart. She is a lively and volatile dream to which I hope to return many times throughout my life.